Magic the Gathering didn't used to look like this. For nearly 20 years, Magic had what was known as a block structure. 3 sets released in the fall, winter, and spring, all taking place on a single plane, with a standalone core set released in the summer. Though released one at a time, the 3 sets in a block were thematically linked, with each successive set building upon what was established by its predecessors. Altogether, a block told a cohesive, evolving narrative through world building and game design. The block system meant that players would spend an entire year on a single plane, watching a story unfold across 3 sets. Scars of Mirrodin block, for instance, depicted the Phyrexian takeover of the beloved plane of Mirrodin. Glistening oil, unknowingly brought by Mirrodin's creator Karn, seeped into the metal plane, slowly corrupting its denizens into something horrific. The story began with Scars of Mirrodin, where the oil had only infected much of black and green, as well as a little bit of blue. In Mirrodin Besieged, the battle for Mirrodin's fate was in full swing, as the oil had spread to infect half the plane, including its first foray into white and red. Between the release of Mirrodin Besieged and the final set of the block, Wizards built hype for the story by teasing 2 possible concluding sets, Mirrodin Pure and New Phyrexia. Players were invited to vote on who should win the conflict. Ultimately, the Phyrexians prevailed, pushing the Mirrans to the brink of extinction. The evolution of this heartbreaking story wasn't just shown in the block's art and flavor text. Every card had either a Mirran symbol or a Phyrexian one to demonstrate the card's alignment. In the first set, Scars of Mirrodin, only 17% of the cards in the set were Phyrexian aligned. By New Phyrexia, the ratio had flipped. Just 15% of the set was aligned with the Mirran resistance. Mechanically, representation of the Phyrexian keywords Infect, Proliferate, and Living Weapon bloomed dramatically throughout the block as the Mirran keyword Metalcraft shrank to just 3 cards by its conclusion. Even the ability word Imprint, associated with Mirrodin since its inception in the original Mirrodin block, switched sides in the final set of Scars block, appearing exclusively on 3 Phyrexian-aligned cards in New Phyrexia, one for each of the colors that had been most affiliated with the Mirran resistance throughout the story: white, red, and blue. For 20 years, blocks defined Magic the Gathering. It was inconceivable that sets would work any other way. But while many Magic the Gathering players, such as myself, have a lot of nostalgia for the days of blocks, the system wasn't perfect. For one thing, many of the later sets in the block tended to be small sets, which had serious design issues. The structure of many blocks was the same. Introduce the premise of a plane in the first set, then blow up that premise over the course of the story, leaving the plane unrecognizable by the end. What's more, many players were tired of a plane by the 3rd set of a block. Worse, if a plane missed the mark for you, even at the beginning of a block, you were stuck with a plane you didn't like for a full year. After a period of experimentation, Wizards eventually did away with blocks entirely, giving us what we have now: 1 plane, 1 set. Entire storylines are introduced and concluded within the same collection of 250 cards. This year, we have 7 sets, which means we will visit 7 planes. Oh wait, actually that's not true. We are going to visit the plane of New York City twice. All this hopping from plane to plane, this inability to really dig in an evocative way to a new plane like Bloomborough, or linger and savor the flavor upon returning to a beloved plane like Lorwyn, honestly, it's exhausting. While there were absolutely issues with the old block structure, there are many, many more issues with our current system. I therefore feel strongly that we need to return to blocks, not as they were, but as something new. Here's why. Let's take a look at Cowabunga, Prof! I'm here for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles episode of Shuffle Up and Play! It's Weirdness to 11, brah! What the hell? No, we are not doing a Ninja Turtle shuffle up. Shouldn't you be out fighting crime or crashing a Lorwyn Eclipse pre-release or something? Dude, who can even afford pre-release? I need that shuffle up appearance fee. Crime may not pay, but fighting it doesn't either. Foot Clan soldiers don't drop much loot. Ha! Yeah! Whoa! Did you just unalive that foot soldier for pizza? Yeah, dude. New York City plane is rough. It's hella expensive. Me and the bros gotta find some cash fast because rent is due. It really is Brooklyn 2.0. Hey, why don't you just move like literally anywhere else in the world besides New York City? You're right. There's absolutely no options whatsoever. Okay, well then how about learning a valuable job skill like coding or back-end web development? No options at all. Idiot, if you can understand all the text on a Magic the Gathering card, then you can learn to code. That's a Magic card? Yeah, it sure is. And that's right, you too can learn to code with boot.dev. Oh, whoa, isn't that the learning platform that's designed to turn learning into a game? Yep. And you too can learn to code with boot.dev. With boot.dev, you'll be leveling up your knowledge of coding languages like Python and Go from square one, just like an RPG. There's quests, unlockable rewards, and even boss battles to help you lock in and learn a great new skill set to set yourself up for a career in programming. I'm coding, bro! I'm coding! Look at you, you're coding and building real projects. Just go to boot.dev and use my code Tellarian to get 25% off your entire first year on their annual plan. Linked in this video description or just scan the QR code. Thanks, Prof. With boot.dev, I could even program the Technodrone into the Technodude and get down with it. Kids or teenagers or the turtles, they're turtles. What? I'm talking to a turtle here. I'm playing Magic cards with turtles. What's going on? Thank you, boot.dev, for sponsoring this video. The block system was the embodiment of storytelling through game design and game design through storytelling. In the absence of blocks, the Magic story has suffered, and the game's design has suffered with it. Did Murders at Karlov Manor feel like a Ravnica set? Be honest, without looking, can you name a single story spotlight card from Edge of Eternities? Where were all the fairies in Lorwyn Eclipsed? From both a world-building and mechanical perspective, Magic would benefit from revisiting the block structure from time to time. This does not need to be set in stone. We don't need a block for every plane or every story. Plenty of standalone sets work great. Others would benefit from having a follow-up set to continue or conclude the events introduced in the first set. All of this should depend on the set, on what the story and the design requires. Let's start with the story. Magic story. The Magic story today is noticeably less evocative than it was during the era of blocks. A set like March of the Machines, for instance, was the culmination of the years-long New Phyrexia plot arc. Yet the Phyrexian invasion of the multiverse both began and concluded in the same set, leaving no room for tension or any real excitement surrounding the events of the plot. When Karn broke his covenant of pacifism and ripped Elish Norn's head from her body, I should have felt a wave of catharsis building up for more than a decade. Instead, I felt nothing. We get introduced to an immensely popular new plane like Bloomborough, and then immediately leave. There's no time to develop stakes because there's no time to invest in the world. It's nearly impossible to glean the story of Bloomborough from the cards alone, the way you could with Scar's block or Alara block. And who knows when we'll go back. Duskmourn is another example. You probably know it's a plane-wide haunted house, but do you know how the house came to be? In Aetherdrift, there were 10 racing teams. Can you name all 10 of them? You can name all 10 guilds. Aetherdrift was a lot more recent than Ravnica. We can get into the nitty-gritty. Do you know what a quiescence is? How about a harrowing? I sincerely doubt it for most of these, unless of course you're someone who takes pleasure in reading the magic story posted on their website. But these are integral to the lore of the plane. Lore that is legitimately pretty cool and coherent once you take the time to dig into it. Why couldn't we have had a set about the house spreading across the plane and a follow-up set taking place in the now plane-wide haunted house? I don't think it's a coincidence that this blockless era of magic, especially after the conclusion of the Phyrexia arc, has given us some of the most disjointed and immersion-breaking sets Magic the Gathering has ever seen. The detective set, the cowboy set, the 80s horror set, the race car set, and even the space opera set. From a flavor perspective, all 5 sets feel disjointed and distant from the typical flavor of Magic lore, but none of them necessarily had to feel that way. Every one of those sets would have benefited tremendously from having a little more breathing room to give us an opportunity to warm up to their anachronistic flavor. For example, with Murders at Karlov Manor, you have one set that has a more traditional Ravnica feel that includes Teysa's murder. Set up Tristani's motivations in subtle ways throughout your depictions of the different guilds. Yes, a Ravnica set with all 10 guilds represented would be a difficult feat to pull off, but we'd been to Ravnica 3 times already. I think you could depict the 10 guilds in a single set the way Bloomborough depicted its 10 different creature types. Meanwhile, the death of a fan-favorite character like Teysa would feel like a genuine gut punch. When Proft is introduced in the follow-up set, we'd be rooting for him to get to the bottom of the murder, rather than mocking him and his host of detective hat-wearing cohorts. War of the Spark is a great example of how to do this right. We had 2 traditional Ravnica sets back to back, followed by an immensely ambitious finale that blew players' minds. Guilds of Ravnica and Ravnica Allegiance set up Bolas's increasing influence on the plane. Having planeswalkers head the guilds that had fallen to Bolas was a brilliant way to demonstrate this influence. Between Guilds and Allegiance, there was speculation among players about which 3 of the 5 remaining guilds would have planeswalkers. As players opened and played with both these sets, hype built among the community about what this final battle with Bolas would entail. And then the trailer hit. The trailer for War of the Spark, with the dramatic rendition of Linkin Park's In the End, remains one of the best pieces of content Wizards of the Coast has ever put out. 7 years later, the video has 15 million views. Gideon's sacrifice to save Liliana is one of the most memorable moments in Magic lore history. Has there been a single event in the Magic story since War of the Spark that carried nearly the same weight? I honestly can't think of one. Game design. Of course, as much as I love when Magic lore is good, story alone is just not enough reason to bring back blocks. But there are many ways that game design has suffered in their absence as well, especially since Standard has ballooned to the size that it currently is. With Standard as big as it is, cohesion across sets is even more valuable. Otherwise, you wind up where we are now, with the majority of decks in Standard consisting of either generic piles of the best cards in their respective colors, or all the best cards for a specific strategy pulled from a single set. The latter is especially egregious. You've got Is It Lessons and Bant Airbending, which consist almost entirely of Avatar cards. Boros Dragons mostly takes its creature package from Tarkir Dragonstorm. Elementals is a pile of Lorwyn Eclipsed Elementals, plus 4 Roaming Throne. The cross-set synergies that do exist tend to be deciduous mechanics like Landfall, or Prowess that appear more regularly. Yes, with Standard being as large as it is, sometimes you get a situation like the synergy between between Doc Orlok, Grizzled Genius, and the Airbending mechanic. But I would argue that a combo deck like Airbending is not a positive addition to the format, even if it isn't very good. Losing to the Aang Swift Savior, Appa Steadfast Guardian loop at instant speed is one of the more miserable things that can happen in Standard right now. Trying to tell a full story in a single set is also how you wind up with the piles of legends we now get with every set. It's not just a problem with universes beyond sets. Even in-universe sets have way too many legends, because they're all trying to do too much. Edge of Eternities tried to simultaneously introduce 6 brand new characters to the Magic world and show us what they did in the actual plot of the story, all within the same set of 250 cards. This meant each character got 2 cards so that we could see them all at 2 phases in their life. The biggest problem from a design perspective is what happens when you have a pile of disconnected sets in a year. You're not building on anything. Every set you design starts from 0. This makes it way easier to make power level mistakes. If you count the artifact lands from original Mirrodin as a single ban, then more than half of all cards that have ever been banned in Standard were printed since the discontinuation of blocks. Here's another way to look at it. There are 12 full-size sets in Standard with an ordinary rotation structure. 8 of those sets have at least 1 card banned from them. Wilds of Eldraine, Lost Caverns of Ixalan, Murders at Karlov Manor, Thunder Junction, Bloomburrow, Duskmourn, Tarkir Dragonstorm, and Final Fantasy. 3 of the 4 sets without a banned card are the 3 most recent full-size sets. A year from now, any of Quantum Riddler, Ice-Till Explorer, Badger Mole Cub, Sunderflock, or Deceit could conceivably be banned depending on how the meta continues to evolve, with 5 more sets on the horizon in this year alone. Look at the 10 cards currently banned in Standard. Just 3 of these, Heartfire Hero, Corey Steelcutter, and Monstrous Rage, have a set-specific mechanic attached to them. The vast majority are just generically broken cards. When consecutive sets build on each other, designers can learn from their previous designs. They get better at calibrating the power levels of their mechanics. Look at the difference between the original Eldraine and its successor, Wilds of Eldraine. Original Eldraine was a miserable set in Standard for its entire tenure in the format. Yes, Wilds of Eldraine has 3 cards banned in Standard, and very nearly had a 4th, Agatha's Soul Cauldron. But Throne of Eldraine saw a whopping 6 cards banned across multiple different strategies, and it was only in Standard for 2 years. It also had many other unbanned cards that dominated Standard until the day they rotated. The lessons learned from Original Eldraine to its follow-up are evident when you look at the adventure mechanic. Multiple adventure creatures from Throne of Eldraine were way too powerful. Bone Crusher Giant, Brazen Borrower, Love-Struck Beast, and Giant Killer. In Wilds of Eldraine, designers were careful about printing generically powerful 2-for-1s with their mechanic. The knobs were turned much more reasonably with the follow-up set. Original Eldraine featured broken cards in every corner of its design space. Wilds of Eldraine didn't retread any of those mistakes. All of its broken cards delved into uncharted design waters. If the original Eldraine had been a block instead of a pair of standalone sets, I bet both sets would have put a lot fewer broken cards into Standard. That's because the sets would have been designed together, with plenty of time to troubleshoot the innovations of each. In the current era of blockless game design, constructed Magic does not feel nearly as curated as it once did. It should not be a regular occurrence that a new set adds 1 or 2 complete standalone decks to Standard, and yet, increasingly, that is what is happening, because so many of the mechanics in these sets are parasitic. In other words, they only play well with other cards from the same set. This happens when R&D wants a set-specific mechanic to be constructed playable. They have to juice enough cards that use the mechanic to account for the archetype getting no further help while it's in Standard. Simply put, Wizards of the Coast no longer designs metagames. Rarely do high synergy decks evolve over the course of a year. They either appear immediately or they never appear at all. Individual cards feel designed in a vacuum because, well, they kind of are. We either get generic powerhouses like Quantum Riddler or parasitic ones like Gran. Something new. So where do we go from here? We're burning through all of our worlds at a breakneck pace, to the point where there's nowhere left to return to, no new planes left to visit. This is not sustainable. We need to slow the F down. Critics of the old block model rightfully point to the many flaws of that system. Players really did get burnt out on planes. Small sets are absolutely rife with design problems, and sets at the end of each block certainly did sell a lot worse than those at the beginning of a block. Something people often say is that you can't nostalgize the best that blocks had to offer without acknowledging that there were many years throughout Magic's history defined by terrible blocks. But this is why I'm proposing that we only revisit blocks sometimes, when they fit the needs of play design and of the story. If blocks are only good when they're good, then why not use them when they're good and stick to standalone sets when a block wouldn't be appropriate? It feels like they almost tried it with Midnight Hunt and Crimson Vow, but besides both sets taking place on Innistrad, they did not feel thematically linked at all. Midnight Hunt felt like a half-baked attempt to fix the werewolf mechanic with no real story attached to it, let alone any mention of the wedding that would comprise its successor. This return to Innistrad would have benefited tremendously from the kind of mechanical cohesion that blocks once had. It certainly would have made Double Feature into something that was actually worth doing. Not that sets in a block necessarily need to be drafted together. It would be cool if each set in a block could stand alone as a draft format, but also fit together if players wanted to mix them up. But the goal here is not to bring back what we had. Again, I'm not saying go back to the old system. The goal here is to take the good parts of what we had and apply them to what we have now as appropriate. So many sets from recent years would have had far fewer problems if the thing they were trying to do had been split up across two sets. Some might say that the reason Wizards was willing to take the risks that they did on unconventional sets like Bloomburrow and Duskmourn was precisely because they were only committing to a single set by doing so. But I would argue that this decision does not give these exciting innovations a fair shake. They may be reducing the consequences of a failure, but they are also making failure more likely. If they believe in a concept enough to design a full expansion set around it, why not believe in it enough to design two? Your innovation should preclude caution, not exclude it. Who knows? Maybe there's an opportunity somewhere to do a 3-set block again, the way the War of the Spark arc did. Honestly, the success and popularity of the Guilds of Ravnica's pseudo-block is all the proof necessary to demonstrate why this idea has merit. They tried this once right away and knocked it out of the park. Why have we never gone back to that well? Honestly, with 7 sets a year, the biggest drawback to 3-set blocks isn't nearly as much of a factor anymore. If a year begins with a 3-set block on a plane you hate, don't worry, you'll be off that plane by summertime. Yes, the longer you spend on a plane, you run the risk of plane fatigue, but that fatigue goes both directions. Players are just as likely to be fatigued by jumping incessantly from one plane to the next as they are to be fatigued by dwelling for too long. Call me naive, but I think as long as you design a good set, people will appreciate it, and if sometimes the best set you can design is a direct follow-up to the one that came before it, I don't see why sour memories of the past should stop you. Of course, it's hard to make any of these changes when more than half of all sets are universes beyond. When I say we are burning through all our worlds, I can already hear WotC saying, don't worry, we're moving on to other people's worlds. A block with a great story that gets interrupted by a commercial for Marvel isn't really what I have in mind here. But if we do find ourselves telling our own stories again, or at least telling them more often than we do other people's stories, then I would like to see a reevaluation of the way we tell those stories. I would like to see increased flexibility in storytelling reflected in card design. I'd like to see a return to metagames that feel curated with care rather than emergent phenomena from piles of generically powerful cards and set-constructed decks. The first step in that journey would be a willingness to spend more time in the environments the designers of this game create. We are blessed with some truly, truly wonderful worlds throughout the Magic multiverse. What's the rush to leave them? But of course, that is just my opinion, and now I want to hear from you. Would you like to return to blocks? And if so, how would you like to see it done? Let me know in the comments below. And of course, you can help me out greatly by hitting that subscribe button or just watching another video after this one, whether it's the most recent episode of Shuffle Up and Play or our guide to which booster box to buy. I hope very much those videos, like this video, have been of some help and interest to you.
Next time on Shuffle Up and Play.
What's up? It's Shuffle Up and Play. Today, I've brought 3 of the last Yu-Gi-Oh! Tubers to play a real card game.
Okay, wow.
You don't gotta expose us like that.
The worst thing in the world is playing Yu-Gi-Oh! The second worst thing in the world is playing anything else.
Well, we're playing something else today. Island!
What is this? I'm not used to having to pay for things.
Yeah, that must be
so.
post errata there.
You know, it was really kind of you to bring a nuclear bomb.
I just thought I'd mix things up a little bit.
It rhymes with schmol schming.
Well, you can schmuck your...
I could whiff.
I don't think I've seen you whiff one time in the practice you've done with this card.
Oubliette! Oubliette! I'm gonna oubliette it!
What's he doing?
Yeah.